What if one quiet act of love, meant for no one's eyes but your own, was seen by the most powerful man in the city, and it changed your life forever? The Montrose estate was a fortress of wealth, towering gates, marble hallways, and chandeliers that glimmered like captured stars. To Althea Bennett, a 27-year-old black woman from the south side of Brookhaven, it was a whole different planet. She hadn't been born into privilege. She'd clawed her way out of hardship just to get here. She took the job as a live-in maid because she needed stability. Her mother's medical bills were piling up. Her younger brother's tuition was overdue, and she was determined not to drown. But working for Adrian Montrose, the billionaire real estate mogul whose name commanded respect and fear, wasn't exactly easy. Still, there was one bright spot: the baby. Ethan Montrose was just 7 months old, with soft brown curls and the kind of smile that made you forget the world was cruel. Althea had been assigned to handle his nighttime care, a task she cherished even when exhaustion pulled at her like chains. That night, the wind howled against the estate's tall windows. Ethan had been crying for hours, his tiny fists waving, his face red with frustration. The gold-trimmed crib looked like a royal ornament, but it felt cold, impersonal, nothing like the warmth of a human heartbeat. So Althea laid a blanket on the plush nursery rug and curled up beside him. She held him close, humming a tune her grandmother once sang to her, the melody carrying the ache of generations who knew love had to be protected. Slowly, Ethan's breathing calmed, his tiny hand clutching her shirt as if anchoring himself to safety. She didn't know how long she stayed there. Her eyes grew heavy, and soon she drifted off, her arm protectively around him, her back pressed against the wall, her body acting as a barrier between him and the world. That's when it happened. A shadow moved in the doorway. The faint scent of expensive cologne filled the air. Adrian Montrose, tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a suit despite the late hour, stood there, watching. His expression was unreadable, the kind of look that made boardroom rivals fold under pressure. But instead of speaking, he stepped further into the room. His polished shoes made no sound on the carpet. He crouched down, studying the scene, his billion-dollar heir asleep in the arms of a woman who had nothing but her name. And yet, she held him as if he were the most precious thing in the world. For a moment, something in Adrian's gaze shifted, like he'd just seen something money could never buy. But Althea didn't know any of this. She didn't know she was being watched. And she definitely didn't know that this night would set off a chain of events that would expose secrets, test loyalties, and force everyone in the Montrose estate to face the truth about love, trust, and power. Adrian Montrose didn't say a word that night. He simply stood there for a long moment, his sharp, calculating eyes studying Althea as though she were some unsolved equation. Then, without a sound, he left the room, closing the nursery door gently behind him. The next morning, Althea woke to the sound of Ethan babbling beside her, his chubby fingers patting her cheek. She sat up quickly, realizing where she was, and panic set in. Did I fall asleep on the floor? Oh no. What if Mr. Montrose saw? Her mind raced as she rushed to start her duties. In this house, mistakes weren't forgiven easily. The billionaire was known for being exacting, and every staff member whispered stories of people who had been fired without notice for the smallest slip-up. At breakfast, she tiptoed into the dining hall to serve coffee, careful not to meet his gaze. Adrian sat at the head of the long table, his custom-tailored navy suit flawless, his expression unreadable. Across from him, his mother, Evelyn Montrose, a woman with eyes as cold as cut glass, watched Althea like a hawk. Halfway through pouring his coffee, she felt it, his gaze on her. Not harsh, not disapproving, but observant, as though he knew something she didn't. "Miss Bennett," he said suddenly, his deep voice slicing through the quiet. Her hand froze midair. "Yes, sir. You're on nursery duty again tonight. I trust you'll keep doing what you do best." The words were simple, but his tone made her pulse quicken. Did he mean the lullabies? Or had he seen her on the floor? She swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." For the rest of the day, little things felt different. The chef offered her an extra plate of warm pastries on the house. The driver gave her a nod of respect she'd never seen before. And most unsettling of all, Adrian passed by her twice in the hallway without a word, but with a glance that lingered just a moment too long. That night, when she entered the nursery, there was something new. A soft wool blanket folded neatly on the armchair, far warmer than the thin one she'd used before. It wasn't the kind of thing that just appeared in this house. But as she reached for it, she caught sight of movement outside the window. Someone in the shadows, watching. She froze. Whoever it was didn't belong to the estate staff. And as they stepped slightly into the glow of the moonlight, Althea realized with a jolt this wasn't a stranger. It was someone from her past. Someone who should never have been here. And if they were, it meant trouble. Althea's breath caught in her throat. The man outside the nursery window wasn't just anyone. He was Darius Cole. She hadn't seen him in almost 2 years, not since the night everything went wrong. Darius was the kind of man your heart wanted to believe in, but life and the law had proven otherwise. He'd been her childhood friend, her first crush, and eventually, the reason she almost lost everything. The last time she saw him, he was in handcuffs, shouting her name as police dragged him away on charges of armed robbery. And now here he was, standing outside the billionaire's home like he owned the night. Her stomach tightened. If anyone else in this house saw him, she'd have a lot more to worry about than losing her job. This wasn't just a rich man's mansion, it was a fortress with high-tech security, armed guards, and a family that valued its privacy above all else. Althea turned to check on Ethan. He was sound asleep, his tiny breath steady. She leaned down, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "I'll be right back." When she slipped into the hallway, her mind was already racing. The servants' stairwell would take her to the side door, no cameras there. But the closer she got, the more she could feel the house watching her, as though the walls themselves were suspicious of her movements. She stepped outside into the cool night air. Darius was waiting near the hedges, half hidden in the shadows. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "I need your help," he said, his voice low but urgent. "And before you say no, it's about your brother." Her heart skipped. "What about him?" Darius glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "He's in trouble, Althea. The kind of trouble that doesn't go away on its own. If you don't help me, he won't make it out." She folded her arms, trying to stay calm. "And I suppose this help of yours involves breaking the law again?" Darius didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled something from his jacket, a folded piece of paper. He held it out to her, but before she could take it, a sudden burst of light flooded the garden. The security floodlights had switched on. A voice rang out from the shadows of the estate. "Miss Bennett, care to explain what you're doing out here?" It wasn't Adrian. It was Evelyn Montrose, and her tone was ice. Evelyn Montrose stepped into the garden, her silk robe trailing behind her like a shadow, the diamonds on her fingers catching the harsh glare of the floodlights. She wasn't the kind of woman you could charm or explain away. She was the kind of woman who could destroy you with a single phone call. Althea froze, the paper from Darius still clutched halfway between them. Her instinct told her to hide it, but Evelyn's sharp eyes had already caught the glint of white. "Give me that," Evelyn ordered, her voice low but cutting. Althea's heart pounded. She glanced at Darius, whose jaw tightened. He didn't move. It's nothing, ma'am," Althea began, trying to keep her voice steady. Evelyn took a slow step closer, her eyes never leaving Althea's. "In my house, nothing is never nothing." She reached out, snatching the folded paper from Althea's hand before she could react. Evelyn opened it with the kind of deliberate care that made your stomach twist. Her eyes scanned the contents, and for the first time, Althea saw something flicker across her face. Surprise. "You need to explain this," Evelyn said, her voice like glass about to shatter. But before Althea could answer, a door slammed somewhere in the distance. Heavy, confident footsteps approached. Adrian Montrose emerged from the shadows, his expression unreadable, but his presence instantly commanding. His gaze went from Evelyn to Althea, to Darius, lingering on each like he was piecing together a puzzle. "What's going on here?" Adrian asked, his voice calm but edged with steel. Evelyn's eyes glittered. "I found our maid out here in the middle of the night, with a man who clearly doesn't belong on this property. And she was holding this." She handed the paper to Adrian. Althea watched as he unfolded it. She expected his face to harden, but instead, his brows knit together in confusion. Then came something else, interest. He looked at her, his gaze searching. Where did you get this? Before she could answer, Darius stepped forward. From me. And if you want to save her brother's life, you're going to hear me out. The air between them thickened. Evelyn looked scandalized. Adrian looked intrigued. And Althea? She suddenly realized this night wasn't about getting caught. It was about being pulled into something much bigger than herself. Adrian's fingers tightened on the paper as he studied Darius. You have 30 seconds, he said, his tone making it clear those 30 seconds were a gift, not a right. Darius took a slow breath. That paper is a bank transfer log. Offshore accounts. Shell corporations. Millions, maybe billions, hidden. And guess whose name is on it? Adrian's jaw shifted ever so slightly. Go on. Darius pointed at the second page. Not yours. Not hers. His. Evelyn stiffened. Watch your tongue, boy, but Darius cut her off. I'm talking about Vincent Hale. Althea's heart skipped. Vincent Hale. She knew that name from the news. CEO of Hale Global Industries. One of Adrian's fiercest rivals. But more than that. He was a man rumored to be involved in money laundering, political bribes, and deals that ended in bodies being found in rivers. Your brother, Darius said, turning to Althea, got mixed up with the wrong people. He was running small jobs for Hale's men. Nothing serious at first, just drop-offs, deliveries. Then last month, he overheard something. About a shipment. About what's really moving through Hale's warehouses. Althea's stomach dropped. Drugs. Darius shook his head. Worse. Weapons. Military grade. The kind that disappear from Black Ops armories. Evelyn's face was pale, but her eyes were sharp. Why bring this here? Why involve us? Darius looked at Adrian. Because Hale is coming for you. And you know it. The silence that followed was heavy, dangerous. Althea felt caught between two worlds, one of power and politics she didn't belong to, and another of street survival she'd been trying to leave behind. Adrian finally folded the paper and slid it into his jacket. Miss Bennett, he said, turning to her, you're going to tell me everything you know about your brother's situation. And Mr. Cole, you're not leaving this property tonight. Evelyn's lips parted in protest, but Adrian silenced her with a glance. And then he looked back at Althea. His voice softened, but only slightly. From this moment on, you work for me in a different capacity. You're in my inner circle now. Which means two things. You do exactly what I say. And you don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. Althea's heart pounded. This was no longer just a job. This was a war she had been drafted into. Althea could feel the weight of Adrian's words pressing down on her. Inner circle. Those weren't just words. They were a contract, a warning, and a lifeline all at once. She thought about her mother in that cramped apartment, about her brother somewhere out there tangled in Vincent Hale's world, and about Ethan, the baby who had no idea the adults around him were at war in shadows. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. Your first assignment is tonight. Tonight, she whispered. Yes, he said, glancing at Darius. You're going to take Mr. Cole and retrieve something from Hale's Midtown office. Something he would kill to keep hidden. Evelyn scoffed, folding her arms. You're sending the maid and a criminal to do espionage work? Adrian, this is absurd. But Adrian didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on Althea's. I need someone Hale won't suspect. Someone who can move quietly. Someone loyal. The word loyal hit her like a stone to the chest. He'd seen her with Ethan. He knew she'd protect the boy with her life. And now, he was asking her to extend that protection to his world. What am I looking for? She asked. A black leather folio in his private safe, Adrian said. It has a gold clasp and no markings. Get it, and I can keep your brother out of prison, or worse. Althea looked at Darius, who gave her the smallest nod. We can do this, he said. 2 hours later, she was standing in the dark alley behind Hale's towering glass headquarters. The hum of the city was all around, cars rushing, distant sirens wailing, neon signs flickering. Darius was picking the lock on the service entrance, his movements fast, but precise. When they slipped inside, the silence was suffocating. Every step echoed too loudly. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like it took forever. Inside Hale's office, the scent of expensive whiskey and leather filled the air. A massive desk dominated the room, and behind it, a steel safe embedded into the wall. Darius was working on the lock when Althea's phone buzzed. She froze, pulling it out slowly. It wasn't a call. It was a text. From an unknown number. "He's watching you." Before she could even process it, the office door creaked open. And standing there, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, was Vincent Hale himself. Vincent Hale leaned casually against the doorframe, a predator who knew the kill was already his. His tailored charcoal suit seemed to drink in the dim light, and the smirk on his face told Althea he'd been expecting them. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice smooth as poison. "I knew Montrose would send someone eventually, but I didn't expect him to send his maid and a street rat." Darius straightened, his hands clenching into fists. "We're not here for a fight." Hale chuckled, stepping into the office. "No, you're here for this." He tapped the safe behind him. "Problem is, what's in there belongs to me, and I don't take kindly to thieves." Althea's pulse pounded in her ears. She didn't know whether to run, talk, or fight. But she remembered Adrian's voice in her head. Loyal and quiet doesn't mean weak. Her eyes darted to the desk. Sitting there, half hidden under a folder, was a small silver pen. It looked ordinary until she spotted the faint blinking light at its tip. A recording device. She moved toward it slowly, pretending to straighten the desk. Hale's eyes followed her, but he didn't stop her. "You think you can just waltz in here and outsmart me?" he sneered. Althea picked up the pen. "I don't need to outsmart you," she said quietly. "You've already done all the talking yourself." Hale's smirk faltered. She clicked the pen, and a voice began to play. His voice. Clear. Crisp. Talking about shipments. About moving the product before Montrose caught wind. About making sure that Bennett kid doesn't live long enough to talk. Hale's eyes went wide. "Where did you get that?" Althea's grip tightened on the pen. "From your desk. You should be more careful where you leave your confessions." Darius stepped in then, fast and smooth, positioning himself between Hale and Althea. "We're done here." But before Hale could make a move, the office door burst open. Two large men in black suits stormed in, Adrian's security team. And behind them, Adrian Montrose himself. He walked in like he owned the place, every step deliberate. His eyes flicked to Althea first, making sure she was unharmed before settling on Hale. "I believe that recording belongs to me now," Adrian said, his tone deadly calm. Hale's confidence began to crack. "This is entrapment." Adrian smiled coldly. "No, this is leverage." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded bank transfer log Darius had given him earlier. "You've been bleeding your accounts dry to fund illegal arms deals, Vincent. And now, I have your signature on every page." Evelyn Montrose entered then, her expression sharp with satisfaction. "And I have friends in the Justice Department who will be very interested in hearing that little recording." Hale's jaw clenched, but there was nothing left for him to say. The guards moved in, securing him while Adrian and Evelyn exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. Adrian turned to Althea. "You've just saved your brother's life, Miss Bennett. And you've just saved mine." Her throat tightened. "What happens now?" Adrian's gaze softened, just slightly. "Now, justice happens." 2 weeks later, the news broke. Vincent Hale, disgraced CEO, facing decades in federal prison. Evidence of his crimes splashed across every network. But what the news didn't report was the quiet victory inside the Montrose estate. Ethan's laughter in the nursery, her brother walking free, her mother's relief when the hospital bills were suddenly paid in full. One night, Althea walked past the nursery and found a brand new armchair where the rug used to be. Adrian's voice came from behind her. "So you never have to sleep on the floor again." She turned, smiling faintly. "I didn't mind the floor." "I know," he said. "That's why you'll never have to." And just like that, the maid who had once been invisible became someone untouchable, protected not by money, but by the respect of the most powerful man in the city. And the knowledge that she had delivered justice where no one else dared. For more gripping tales from the hidden corners of justice and beyond, Subscribe to Dark Side of Luna, where the shadows hold the truth.